A man was murdered in Mexico City on August 20th, 1940, but the killer had been chosen years earlier, thousands of miles away, in a room where no one was supposed to talk about it. I've read the autopsy report myself. The wound was surgical, precise. A mountaineer's ice axe, driven through the skull with enough force to fracture bone, but not enough to kill him outright. He lived another day in agony before the infection took hold, but the real killing started much earlier. It started the moment Leon Trotsky lost the power struggle in Moscow. Let me back up. By 1929, Trotsky was already a ghost in his own country. Joseph Stalin had crushed him in the party apparatus, outmaneuvered him, isolated him, turned his own allies against him. Trotsky wanted permanent revolution. Stalin wanted to build socialism in one nation first. The party chose Stalin. Trotsky was exiled from the Soviet Union, banished like a man with plague. But exile didn't silence him. That was Stalin's problem and his obsession. From Turkey, then France, then Norway, Trotsky kept writing, kept broadcasting, kept organizing. He was a thorn in Stalin's side that wouldn't stop bleeding. And Stalin, I learned from the records, was a man who didn't tolerate thorns. By 1936, Stalin's purges were at fever pitch. Show trials, confessions extracted under torture, executions in basement cells, hundreds of thousands dead. And in those trials, Trotsky's name came up constantly as the hidden hand, the traitor orchestrating sabotage from abroad. None of it was true, but truth had stopped mattering in Moscow years ago. Here's what Stalin's inner circle knew and what Trotsky didn't yet. The NKVD had orders. Not written down, no one wrote things like this down, but orders nonetheless. Find him, kill him, make it look like anything but what it is. And they had time, they had patience, they had resources that spanned continents. Trotsky fled to Mexico in 1937. He thought distance would protect him. He rented a house in Coyoacan, a suburb of Mexico City, and surrounded himself with guards, young supporters, idealists who believed in the Fourth International, in permanent revolution. But you can't guard against an enemy you don't see coming. Enter Ramón Mercader, a Spanish communist, handsome, charming, fluent in multiple languages. He infiltrated Trotsky's circle in 1939 under a false name, Jacques Mornard. No one suspected him. He was trusted. He became friends with Trotsky's grandson. He had access to the inner sanctum, and he was NKVD all along. What Mercader didn't know yet, what none of them knew, was how he'd be used. The NKVD had already tried once in May 1940. Gunmen attacked the house. Trotsky's guards fought back. No one died. The assassination failed. Stalin's patience, however, was infinite. 3 months later, August 20th, 1940, Trotsky was in his study working on an article about Stalin. Mercader came to visit, as he often did. He brought a raincoat over his arm. Under it, hidden, was an ice axe, the weapon of a mountaineer, unusual enough that it wouldn't immediately register as a tool of murder. Trotsky trusted him. That was his fatal miscalculation. Mercader raised the axe and brought it down. The blade bit into Trotsky's skull with a sound that witnesses later described as a crack, not the sound of murder, but something almost mundane. Trotsky screamed. Guards rushed in. Mercader was subdued, captured alive. Trotsky was taken to hospital. The doctors cleaned the wound, but the axe had been poisoned, cyanide mixed into the metal. The infection set in fast. He lingered for 24 hours, conscious, dictating final statements to secretaries. He knew who had sent Mercader. He said Stalin's name one last time. He died on August 21st at 7:25 in the evening, 58 years old. A revolutionary who'd once commanded armies, reduced to a body on a hospital bed in a city that wasn't his own, killed by a man he'd called friend. I've seen the death certificate. The handwriting is shaky. The doctor who signed it understood what they were witnessing. Mercader was arrested. He claimed it was a crime of passion, that he'd acted alone. But the NKVD had built him an escape route. He served 20 years in a Mexican prison, then was released and spirited back to the Soviet Union, where he lived quietly until his death in 1978. He was decorated as a hero. A postage stamp was issued in his honor. Stalin got what he wanted. The permanent revolutionary was permanently silenced. But here's what the historical record shows that Stalin didn't anticipate. Trotsky's writings survived. His ideas didn't die with him. Trotskyist movements still exist today. The man in the ice axe couldn't kill the man's legacy. And Mercader, the files released after the Soviet collapse confirmed what everyone suspected. He was NKVD from the start, a trained assassin, not a passionate idealist. Stalin's long arm reached across an ocean and through years of patient infiltration to strike down a man who'd become inconvenient. The ice axe was just the instrument. Ideology was the weapon. What troubles me most, having studied this case for years, is how ordinary the conspiracy was in its mechanics. Not elaborate, not theatrical, just methodical. A man placed in position, time allowed to pass, trust built, then the moment seized. That's how power actually works, not with dramatic flourishes but with patience and access. Trotsky's murder wasn't the end of Stalin's vendetta, it was the punctuation mark on a sentence written over a decade. A sentence that read, "Dissent will not be tolerated, distance will not protect you, and the state's memory is longer than any exile's." The ice axe was the final word. Subscribe. Every week we uncover how the most powerful men on earth eliminate their enemies, and what the evidence actually tells us.